Hi, I'm here with Stewart Taylor of Eaton Vance, and Stewart has a unique perspective as he is a fixed income portfolio manager. Stewart, thanks for joining us today.
Thanks for having me.
A couple quick questions. How do you find, or maybe you don't, but how do you find the analysis in fixed income markets to differ from that of equities or maybe broader commodities?
Well, one of the things with fixed income is it's a little bit harder to move around. In other words, if you need to change your credit exposure, duration's easy. That's a treasury function. Treasury markets, deep, liquid, you can do that literally in a matter of minutes. But particularly when you're talking mortgages, corporate credit, wider bid-ask spreads, everything is index driven, so you can't be uninvested. So if you sell a corporate and you want to stay close to your benchmark, you have to find a replacement, and sometimes that's kind of a difficult process. So I think compared to equities, we have to be a little bit more sure when we move. We have to have a longer time frame because there's a real expense to changing the portfolio mix. That's the biggest difference. So most of the work I do would be weekly and monthly charts, as opposed to, I think a lot of equity guys probably work weekly and daily charts, so just a little bit broader time frame.
And do you employ in fixed income more of a trend following or a mean reverting nature?
Yeah, I think because of the wide bid-ask spreads, or at least compared to equities, wide bid-ask spreads, that a trend-following methodology is typically better. I chart things like the excess return of mortgages versus treasuries, try and identify trends, and once you identify one, you obviously go with it. But like anything else, you also look for areas that might produce some sort of mean reversion move, and you clearly, as you move to those areas, just like you would in an equity portfolio or a commodities portfolio, you adjust.
Do you have a favorite mean reverting tool that you tend to rely on?
Yeah, so I use mostly a Wyckoff.
Okay.
So I'm more a price bar chart kind of guy than anything else. But at the same time, some of the momentum tools are very in fixed income is a bit more quantitative. So we use a lot of statistical studies to try and identify situations that might produce a mean reversion of some sort. So it's probably a bit different than equities in that regard.
How has the environment changed over the last several years from when you started in the business and using technical analysis to where we are today, and has that shifted your process at all?
Yeah, so the quickness. I think when I first started the charting process in the early 80s, we had Teletrack. We did a lot of charts by hand. It was very, very, companies like Bloomberg were just kind of getting off the ground, and the news took a long time to kind of disseminate its way through the system. So, even 10 years ago, I was saying that trends that used to take months to unfold were now unfolding in weeks and weeks, days and days, hours, and that's only accelerated, I think. And I think the other thing that's really happened in the fixed income markets, like the equity markets, the algorithmic trading, the robots are in control of a lot of stuff now, and but again, I think the thing that hasn't changed is that the longer I've done this, the more convinced I am that most price action is just noise. And there are only a few times each year when the price action and what develops from those points really matters. So that hasn't changed.
Does the process change at all? In other words, are you more reliant on technology where, back in the old days it was a ruler, maybe a compass and a purple crayon, as I always like to joke, but today it's so much more dynamic. Do you find your process has changed in that way?
Oh my God, it changes all the time. I mean, like I said, when I started, it was like we'd order our chart graph paper and we'd tape our charts together, and I had wave charts of the bond market going back, several years at a time, and we'd fold them over, and if we unfolded them, they'd be 30 yards long. So now I can watch a lot more markets. I mean, I literally look at hundreds of charts every single day. I couldn't do that with the technology of even 10, 15 years ago. chart systems like Bloomberg, CQG, pull everything up very quickly if you have a process that's kind of predetermined. Yeah, so have the basic tools I've used changed much? No, I mean, bar charts and momentum still work. Where I have probably changed mostly is the statistical work, and I think to a modern technician, you have to have those tools, right? The fundamental guys you're working with certainly have them, and you better be able to produce them yourself, and you better be able to understand them.
Yeah, as particularly in fixed income, I mean, we've seen in equities the policy measures either from the Fed or TARP or combination ECB, et cetera, having having dramatic impacts on markets. Clearly, something in the bond market as well that you're seeing. How do you use technicals in this type of environment when policy is such a dominant factor?
Sure. Well, they still work.
Yeah.
So many of our accounts are Lehman aggregate accounts. The Lehman aggregate, it's the most inclusive of the bond indices, but it's got treasuries and mortgages make up about 70% of that index. The Fed is directly buying both of those things. Right. The only thing they're really leaving alone is CMBS and the corporates, so and some taxable munis. So they're a huge influence. But it still shows up in the charts, right? The same resistance, the same trend kind of thing. So, but I think too, I've always believed in combining some fundamental knowledge with my technical work. Just the fundamental knowledge that the Fed is taking about 70% of all new duration out of the market, all the time. It's a huge tailwind to the market. So yeah, you've got to look at it, but still it's about momentum, areas that might produce mean reversion, and it hasn't changed my process much.
Stewart, the MTA is celebrating 40 years now. Anything for the young technicians or those interested in pursuing technical analysis that you could recommend or would?
Develop some English skills, because I think as technicians, particularly as we're trying to integrate into a more professional environment, you better be able to communicate your viewpoint in a concise and clear manner, and in a manner that the fundamental guys that you're working around understand. I start everything I do, or I attempt to, with a conclusion and a bottom line idea. I read way too many technical commentaries that kind of never get to the point. You can't do that and have credibility. So I think that's the number one thing.
Great. Stewart, thank you very much.
Thanks, Jeff. Appreciate it.